that all of us will subscribe to. But that is the expectation. Guests are a source of blessing from the Lord, and we invite them into our fold with that selfish, quote unquote, that selfish perspective that, oh, if I serve you, I'm pleasing the Lord. So what you are doing, allowing us to do when we participate in the food, helping us that responsibility. And we are tested in terms of how we deal as Muslims and believers in engaging the Lord's creation. So the Noble Quran repeatedly stresses some core concepts that I want to just present to you before you and move on. The concept of ihsan, that is excellence in service. I'm expected to be excellent in all of my dealings with you. It's not good enough for me to shake a hand with you and say, how are you? Good to meet you. The concept of ihsan in Islam requires me to go beyond that into the best possible way that I can be good to you. The concept of adl, all endeavors. That every time I take action, I'm judging it to see, is it right? Is it correct? Am I being fair? Now, once again, keep in mind, I'm giving you the idealistic perspective. Of course, there will be questions. You may say, hey, I ran into you the other day and you were a jerk on the road. I understand that. Happens all. I'm guilty of that. But that doesn't mean my faith is wrong. It means I am being guilty. I am not living up to the ideals of Islam. So keep that in mind. There's the concept of hikmah, of wisdom in all actions. That one just doesn't react to what's happening. One questions before one acts and says, has that become knowledge? And am I practicing that knowledge wisely? And perhaps the most stressed of all is this concept of rahmah, of compassion. And in fact, there are some special names in Islam that are given to the Lord, which include Ar-Rahman, the all-compassionate, Ar-Rahim, the all-merciful. And hence the Muslim begins, I go back full circle, when we do anything, we begin with that acknowledgement. Bismillah, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. We say in the name of the Lord, the most compassionate, most merciful. That's a reminder to me, that is the Lord, all compassionate. Show a little bit of compassion in what you do. The Lord, who is the most merciful, show a little bit of mercy in what you do more than that. So once again, then, friends, your presence with us allows us Muslims, your fellow Americans, you have to practice this concept of being hospitable to our guests and this concept of truly getting to know the other. So you are honored, you are guests here. And it is our responsibility to make sure we are welcoming you with open arms, and to sharing whatever we can in terms of hospitality and information. Now, having said that, as we open it up, we can get into a lot of information about the fundamentals of Islam. I don't think you want to get into all of that right now. We can talk about that. I heard one of the younger gentlemen who was already addressing that. But what we can do is dedicate a little bit of time to addressing questions that you may have, but in the backdrop of all the demagoguery that has been going on about Islam, about the Islamophobia that is so prevalent, the immigrants that has been going on, the taking of minorities that has been going on, and how racial discrimination is not being given the attention it deserves. And of late, most importantly perhaps from the Muslim community perspective, we have seen documented in acts of assault, verbal, physical, against Muslims, people who look like Muslims, people who look like they belong to one particular minority. You must have read just yesterday the arrest of three of these ultra-nationalist folks down in the Carolinas who were planning on November 9th to bomb a whole set of buildings where Somalian Muslims live. So this has practical consequences. What rhetoric is used by our crazy politicians can have a true impact on the citizens of this country, and we owe it to ourselves to be aware of that, and then to understand what is driving it, and hopefully become the bulwark against this flood of anti-immigrants, of anti-Islam, and other forms of violence, verbally and physically active. So that is what I wanted to do, to pull this together. So at the least what we hope we can accomplish today is we leave with the three gentlemen out here. You've been so open in coming here, but you become, in a way, representatives of our community and our faith. Next time somebody says, oh, all Muslims are out there, terrorists, they're going to bomb us, I hope you have enough information, and I hope you've come to know us enough that you put your hand up and say, hey, where are you coming from? I mean, yesterday I was speaking at a voting rally, and I felt compelled to quote from what the First Lady of the United States indicated when she was addressing what's going on with Mr. Trump and his remarks. This is not a matter of locker room talk. He said this is a matter of basic human decency. This is a matter about good and bad, right? And so we are here together to commonly agree that we share a lot of what is good and right. As Catholics, as Protestants, and as Muslims, as human beings and as fellow Americans, we share that platform. So once again, we welcome you here. We open up and have some discussion to the extent you have any questions. We want you to leave with as much information, but at the level of comfort that this community, when this mosque is open here, this is a source of peace and stability. That our interest is in making sure the surrounding community is stable and peaceful. That we can build a better neighborhood, because that's what I'm expected to do as a Muslim, that I look after our neighbors and their concerns. So that's what I wanted to share with you, and we'll open up for questions, gentlemen.
I just wanted to comment. I came down because our church provided this brochure in the bulletin, which is our church bulletin, and apparently this is the exact replica of the Council of Islamic Organizations of Greater Chicago.
Yes, the logo, right?
But nobody answered the phone number of the organization.
Wonderful.
To get information. And all of them individually do not have their phone numbers, so there's no address and there's no phone number for each mosque. So maybe next year when you do it again, be sure that somebody's going to answer the phone number, even if it's an individual mosque that volunteers, and then addresses and phone numbers that way, because I'm assuming if any of the other churches put that in their bulletin, which I probably know they did, it's difficult to know where to go. I knew about this mosque because I always pass by it on the way to the Togo.
Oh my goodness.
So I know it was here.
Perfect.
If he asked me about Morton Grove, you know.
Excellent point. I see this is a classic example of you teaching us something that we should have known, but we'll take that back to the council.
Exactly, yeah, I will let them
Perhaps
know
have a
that
special person designated to answer these calls if we are saying there's an open mosque.
Plus, I think he mentioned when I came in the door, I came around 3, and he says, oh, you came in at 30, but
It says,
it says 3
I
o'clock.
know, I told them to change it, they didn't do it.
no, it's our fault. No excuses.
No, it's just
And you're saying this out of concern
I
for us.
open communication to knowing each other.
Absolutely.
We have to have as much knowledge to make the contact.
Bingo.
And I'm just thinking maybe some of the people at Mass this morning looked at this and they thought, well, I'd like to go.
But I cannot at this time.
Right, I didn't order like I did, they didn't answer, and nice day today, so they just gave up.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, we'll make a note of it.
We'll correct that. We have to correct it.
Yes.
Just
I
to
will,
follow
for
up,
sure, I'll
Yes,
tell them
sorry.
tomorrow.
Please go ahead.
just to follow up on his point, I thought this was current 11 this morning.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
So I read about it in the paper about some mosques in the southwest suburbs.
Yeah.
But when I did my own search online, I couldn't find much information about it. It was made so my coworker gave me the time Friday, so thankful that he was able to give me information.
Wonderful. What that tells me is we will have to have a review at the
my little packet here, because I thought of going to pick up a few things, but it's always best to have the people show you what's the good material. So I'm looking forward to reading it. The other thing in light of what's going on, I mean, I've been a man of faith since I was a little kid, and it's changed over the years, as I've already said. And so, and there's been times like you said, you know, you're on the highway and somebody passes you, and, you know, you're not what you would like to be, or what God wants you to be. But in this, and so there's real life stuff, and then there's religion stuff. In this day and age, with everything that's going on, it seems like there'd be a lot of fear. And so as a man of faith, as people of faith, how do you handle the potential? You know, like that hotel, Somalis. What do you do on a daily basis to come to grips with what's going on?
That's a very important and deep question. I'll just try to address that from a personal perspective. What I have learned to be in this field of interfaith work for about 25, 30 years now. I was blessed. I grew up in India, and it was very interesting. We all say that, those who are from India. We grew up with a bunch of religions that you are exposed to. You have Hindus, and you have Christians, you have some Jews, and you have, within the Hindu tradition, you have 5, 6, 10 different sects that you get exposed to. But you grow up with them, and you realize your friends come from different backgrounds, and they have different cultures, and in particular in India, they come from different languages, cuisines, all of that are different. You just get used to that. And but I came here with that understanding of, and by the way, I was telling these two folks here I speak about this often in my interfaith speeches. I owe a lot of my upbringing to the Jesuits. I grew up going to convent schools in India, and they instilled the best of discipline, the best of behavior, the best of language. So the nuns who wrapped those wooden rulers on, and the pencils on my knuckles, they instilled a lot of good upbringing. And in fact, that was the basis for me to start when I came here and got exposed more to the religious pluralism, and I became active in the Muslim community. That served as a good stepping stone because I knew already, okay, I got a lot of my goodness in practice from the convent schools, so I knew I didn't have to fear them. But in a roundabout way, having said that, one of the things that I have learned is essential goodness in dealing with people is a very important avenue toward dispelling ignorance, avoiding fear, in fact, and then reconciliation. So my father always taught me, he said, regardless of who the person you engage is, be the kindest that you can be to them. And I'm very thankful to him. May the Lord grant him paradise. But he never said, be good to a Muslim. Even though we grew up in the community, he never told me, look for Muslims or be good to Muslims. He just said, be good in all that you do. And that instills a sense of peace and calmness within. And then when you come out here and you engage neighbors. So when you look at essential goodness and dealings, and what has helped me is this Islamic concept of neighborliness. Because Muslims have a huge responsibility toward neighbors. The traditions of the Prophet, may the peace and blessings of the Lord be upon him, where he said, as the Archangel Gabriel, where we have Archangel Gabriel who come with divine revelations to the Prophet, and who would then pass that on to his followers. And he said, I heard so often from the Archangel Gabriel about the rights of neighbors. He said, I expected sometime there would be a right of inheritance to be given to me. Because we are told as a Muslim that this is a commonly quoted tradition that Muslims are familiar with, that I cannot be a true believer if I'm not looking after at least the 14 neighbors around me. We are told that to the extent that if I am cooking food in my kitchen, and from the food walks over to my neighbor, and he or she is not capable of having that food, then I am infringing their rights. So I cannot be content in having my own food, knowing that my neighbor is not rich enough to have that food. And so when we take that into account, and the 40 we are told is, it's not a figure to be literally taken. I cannot say 40 and then the 41st family I'm ignoring. It's to let me know it's not just you and your 3 houses around you. And these days, people often, I get into conversations that how far does that concept of neighborliness goes? In an age of globalization, societies are interconnected. If I know, for instance, we see what is happening in Syria, let's say, or what is happening, we have the Christian oppression in Rwanda and other places. Are they my neighbors? We know so much more about what's happening in Aleppo. I know Boris Johnson forgot about it, but not the rest of the world. So we know what's happening in Aleppo more than perhaps I know than what's happening in Moline, Illinois. Does that make them my neighbors? The Islamic concept said yes. So they are in a way my neighbors. I've got to be thinking about them. The least I can do is pray for them, stand up for their security, donate for them, and the same thing applies elsewhere. So I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but in practice, that's what we do. And at the Council of Religious Leaders, Chicago's got one of the most robust, organized interfaith communities. Across the nation for sure, but internationally, I've been around the world, it's one of the most. So when we sit around the leaders of each of the faith communities, our biggest strength there is that we can sit together and talk regardless of what's happening around here. So regardless of the fear, why can we sit there? Because we have an element of trust. And we have an element of information. So information is the best way to dispel, because it's established that when you have lack of information, that ignorance leads to fear, and that fear leads to hatred, and hatred leads to destruction. So now, yes, there's a lot of fear and anger and hatred going on. What I can do within my control is all the people that I come in contact with, I embrace them as best as I can and tell them, let's sit together and talk and chat. And we hope that that is passed around. That's one practical aspect, but there's much more to it than that. There are the media aspects of it, and there's the political aspect of it, there's the socioeconomic aspect of where the fear comes from, hatred and the like. But we cannot succumb to this understanding, especially, I'll tell you what is most distressing to me. I've been in this country now about 36 years, my 4th decade. The entire country is built on the power of immigrants. This is what it is. This is the beacon of what happens when immigration is managed correctly. And for us now to suddenly turn our backs on those who are coming in, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And then this is a nation that was built on pluralism. People, the founding fathers, they were escaping the religious, what they felt was persecution, and they came here and said, deliberately, we will organize so that religion does not play a role in any discriminatory manner. So all of those founding principles seem to be under attack, but that's okay, let's leave it there. We have to make amends amongst ourselves. So that, I'm not sure if I answered that question directly, but it's one way of approaching it.
Well, one thing I've heard you say, in other words, is we're loving other people casts out that fear.
Sure.
Taking the high road, as Michelle Obama says,
Sure.
kind of casts out
Sure.
that fear.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
it's kind of a reaction to it.
Absolutely. And it's a test that we all have to face. And we are in a mosque, and I tell you, I speak to my brothers and sisters from the Muslim faith here. We tend to fall into this trap of thinking, okay, we are here in the mosque and we are pious people, we just prayed and we don't have to worry about it. The others who are not praying, they are not good people. We have to be constantly reminded, regardless of what we just prayed, I have no idea if my prayer was accepted by the Lord. I don't know if I have any level of proximity to the Lord better than anybody else. He alone judges, and when will I find out? When it's too late for me to do it. Of other faith, just assume their goodness is way better than yours. Most likely than not, that's the case, because we tend to get a biased perspective of ourselves. So that test has to be applied, and that's why I said to these 2 youngsters before they left, I said, don't assume that you've just come to learn, because you are indeed teaching us. We learn quite a bit from each other if we set aside the pretensions of our piety.
question.
Please.
Don't want to keep everybody, but in every religion that I've been connected with, which is Catholicism and Mosque, there are those who are more open to being in other
Of course.
people's other faiths. And then there's always these fundamentalists who say, no, it's got to be this way.
Sure.
There's separate. I'm not talking about radical.
Sure.
But do you have to deal with within your own community?
Absolutely.
Those people who are fundamental.
Absolutely.
Don't touch them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
I
you're
can
just as human as the rest of us.
Yes, absolutely. Perhaps a little more so. But you put it very perfectly. In fact, I'm going to use that in a couple of my upcoming lectures where you said, let's leave this radicalization terrorism aside. Even then, we have these issues to be addressed. I can tell you this, in September 11th, when that happened, out of a quirk of fate, 6 months before that, I was elected to be the chairman of this Council of Islamic Organizations. Then September 11th happens, and it was a phenomenal test of how committed you are. I'm a lawyer by profession. I work for a major corporation. Then I literally had to take 2 weeks off to go all around, just dealing with the media, I didn't do anything particular. We did it all together, but I had to make that commitment. So we did all of that, and the thing that we learned then was the value of alliances and coalitions. And my wife will smile at this because at least 10 years before that time, I was out there speaking as a leader of the community saying, we cannot be focused on ourselves. We cannot practice our religion within our mosques and the neighborhoods around. We have to go out, connect with our fellow Americans, fellow beings, and build friendships and the like. The reason I bring up September 11th, all that work came in handy at that time because there were some of us who had reached out. And the resistance to address your question directly was in various forms. The focus for many people was, well, we have enough of our concerns. We've got to manage, we've got to build our mosques, we have to build our Islamic schools, and we've got to take care of our children and our families. Who's got time to go out and do that? But there was a pocket, and there continues to be a smaller pocket of people who said, hey, let's focus on Islam. We don't have to worry about that. Let's not get tainted by that. So there is that. To answer your question, in a very honest and open form, we have pockets of resistance, and we continue to have smaller pockets of resistance.
I appreciate that.
That's right. And we talk often about that at the Council of Religious Leaders, how particularly the Jewish faith, they have their segregationists, and Catholics have that, and particularly the evangelists, so they have that. So we have our share. But trust me, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, what I've learned is virtually every area of social and community concern that we have as people of the Muslim faith, it is identical in almost all aspects to counterpart concerns of the Christians, the Catholics, the Protestants. And I end with a story, with an anecdote in that regard. We pay for it, but they have a gathering that particular day where food is served for us, and we have to worry about the halal and the kosher traditions. We do all of that, but then they have a huge gymnasium that is associated with this church. They have a school. And I was talking during one of the retreats to the people there saying, oh, so good, all filled up, right? On Fridays and Saturdays with the youngsters. And they said, let me get you in on a secret. Man, it's hard to get those youth to come here, and we have to entice them with either food or movies or something. And I said, oh, we do the same too. We try to put out free pizza. We've done that. You guys know that better. Same shared concerns. So, anything else?
I just want to comment on the fact that in the U.S. it's temporary for this election. Some people will be affected by it, people that don't have strength, very good morals. The problem is the people they come in contact with suffer from them. And the other side of the coin is that we're limiting the number of people from Syria that can come here as refugees to get away from the killing and the poverty. And we're losing people that can help build this nation to additional immigrants from other countries. So, but what the Muslims are facing now is the same thing that the Jews face when they came over, the Irish face, the dirty Irish. The Italians were all mafia, you know. It's the same with every group when they first come over in masses, not when they drip over in masses. It's a threat to people about their jobs, it's a threat to people about their neighborhoods.
Sure.
And with time, all heals, but it's difficult to live through that period.
You're right on the money there. That's a perspective that I try to use in my sermons and when I'm talking to communities. I say, don't be despondent because what we are facing is nothing unique. It shouldn't happen, that's okay, we understand that. But let's not elevate ourselves to the situation of we are completely oppressed and being discriminated against because all other communities literally went through that. And the best example I use based on my exposure here is the African American community. None of the religious communities can say what they've suffered, what the African Americans have done. So we have a lot, and there are African American Muslims, and when I engage them, they tell me, they say, you guys are complaining. And I tell them, I'm sorry. When I remember what you go through, I take that all back. Look, we have no basis. And the American Indian, absolutely, look at that. So, yes, we have a lot of reparations to be done, but that will happen. But my big concern, I'll end on this point, what has happened with the Trumpian movement is what could not have been openly. There was a small pocket of people who had those hidden sentiments. Somehow it's becoming more and more acceptable to say that openly. And that's a shame because, again, it won't last. But it is pushing that envelope so much that society is being shattered, and it'll take longer to rebuild. We will rebuild. This is a strong nation, and we pull together as people of different faiths that committed to those good values, and we do it. It'll just take a little bit longer. Very good. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you for joining us once again. I'll turn it over to Mr. Mumtaz. He organized it, and I'm honored to be here.
President of Islamic organization at Greater Chicago. He mentioned that only 6 months after 9/11 happened. And within few hours, his statement came as a condemnation of the act of the people. His statement came from the Council of Islamic Organization. He was the president, and he made a statement within few hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. His statement came, which was very, very, very touching. So involved in the community services. I think right after that, very few months after that, FBI gave him an award.
I told them at the time, I don't know if I'm prepared to accept that because the community is not
But
ready
he was
for it. But it
so powerful. And
thank you, that's good.
because of his act, I convinced this Masjid that we should go to for very meeting, and since then, I'm so much interested about him. I like him very, very much.
Well, I've come to learn that we are conscripted in the cause by the Lord. We are not worthy. I know I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. But then you end up thinking, okay, the Lord works in mysterious ways. He's taking a flawed being and letting him serve. So I accept that. And I hope it's the salvation.